We're going to begin with L'chol Ish Yashem. This is a setting that we do on Erev Rosh Hashanah since I've been here, and it actually was Rabbi Stein who loved this setting of this prayer, of this text, and he asked me to sing it. Cantor Singer said that he also asked him to sing it too, and so this was a setting that he loved of L'chol Ish Yashem.
Each of us has a name given by the source of life and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by our stature and our smile, and given by what we wear. Each of us has a name given by the mountains and given by our walls. Each of us has a name given by the stars and given by our neighbors. Each of us has a name given by the source of life and given by our parents. Each of us has a name given by the sea and given by our death.
So in a little while, we're going to allow people an opportunity to share any stories that they have of Rabbi Stein. So I wanted to share a little bit of my own reflections on my relationship with him. I had the privilege of working with Rabbi Stein for 8 years, and he was a great mentor and friend. He helped shape me into the cantor I am through his mentorship, advice, and guidance. When I started here as an intern and then as the assistant cantor, he took me under his wing and always looked for opportunities to help me grow as a cantor. I learned an enormous amount from him. Perhaps the most important thing he taught me was to always put my family first. He cared about me and my life outside of the synagogue. I remember, as probably many of you do, when Becky, my wife, went into labor on Yom Kippur. And since she wasn't having contractions yet, I thought I could do the morning service. And so I walked into the synagogue, and Rabbi Stein instantly sent me home to be with Becky. He knew that was where I needed to be, and I'm grateful he did. While I learned from his advice and guidance, I learned even more from watching him as a rabbi and the way he gave his all to the congregation. From his work ethic and pastoral care to his inspiring sermons, as well as his passion for youth and teen engagement. I know he was not just a mentor to me, he was a mentor to many people, including numerous clergy. He accomplished an enormous amount during his time at Shari Tefillah and has left an important and meaningful legacy here. As people have posted old staff pictures in the last couple of days, it brought back some great fun memories from the time he was here, including our annual end-of-year staff outings at Sammy's Romanian, which there was a vegetarian. Not everyone loved Sammy's Romanian, but it didn't matter. That's where we were going every year because he loved Sammy's Romanian. Our holiday grab bag parties at his apartment with funny gag gifts, holiday meals in his home, our staff calendar retreats, and bowling outings where he always did phenomenally well. I know that I wouldn't be the senior cantor of this congregation if it wasn't for Rabbi Stein believing in me. I am grateful for the time I had working with him, for all he taught me, and for his friendship. May his memory always be for a blessing.
Thank you, Cantor. Honored that Cantor Singer and Rabbi Strom are here with us this evening. A midrash that occurred to me as I've been thinking about Rabbi Stein and as I've been reading all the tributes that I have read online about him as well. The midrash writes, "A sly fox passed a lovely vineyard. A tall, thick fence surrounded the vineyard on all sides. As the fox circled around the fence, he found a small hole in the fence, barely large enough for him to push his head through. The fox could see the luscious grapes growing in the vineyard, and his mouth began to water. But the hole in the fence was too small for him, so what did the sly fox do? He fasted for 3 days until he became so thin that he managed to slip through the hole. Inside the vineyard, the fox began to eat to his heart's content. He grew bigger and fatter than ever before. Then he wanted to get out of the vineyard, but alas, the hole was too small again. So what did he do? He fasted for 3 days again and then just about managed to slip through the hole and out again. Turning his head toward the vineyard, the poor fox said, 'Vineyard, O vineyard, how lovely you look and how lovely are your fruits and vines. But what good are you to me? Just as I came to you, so I leave you.' And so our sages say it is also with this world. It is a beautiful world, but in the words of King Solomon, the wisest of all men, just as a person comes into this world empty-handed, so he leaves it. Only the Torah he studied, the mitzvot he performed, and the good deeds he practiced are the real fruits that he can take with him." This coming March, the Central Conference of American Rabbis, our rabbinic conference, would have feted Rabbi Stein for serving 50 years as a rabbi. He served with distinction some years ago as the president of our conference, and tributes have been flowing in from Jewish professionals everywhere. He served this congregation for 14 of those years, and the impacts he made here, the innovations he brought, the Torah he taught, the advice he gave, the paths of righteousness that he helped people walk will forever be a part of the very fabric of Shari Tefillah and the larger Jewish world. We send condolences today to his beloved Susan, who I know will be watching this later on, to his daughters Rachel and Jessica, and to his 4 grandchildren, to his whole family, and to his extended flock, his congregants here in New York and in Indianapolis and San Diego, and to all the cantors and rabbis and Jewish communal professionals who learned from him and served with him. His honesty, his sense of humor, his vigor, and his passion for Judaism and the Jewish people were all infectious to those he served. He brought light to so many people. And he lived through terrible illness in recent months with courage and optimism. He and I spoke several times over the past few months, and in each case, while acknowledging the challenges he faced, he spoke of the future, of the plans he and Susan were making, and most of all, of his love for his family. He has been taken from them and from all of us far too soon. The lessons he taught by his deeds and by his words will endure forever. And as Cantor said, his memory will be a blessing. It's my honor to invite Rabbi Strom to join us here to share some reflections.
Thank you for the opportunity. I shared on Facebook today some of a letter that I wrote John when the news had turned very sour very fast. And so there's more thoughts there if you'd like to read on the evolution of my relationship and my years of connection with John. That he was across the table from me when I had my interview for rabbinical school, and I told the story of coming into my parents' room and seeing my dad was watching something, and I said, "What are you watching?" And my mom said, "It's a video convincing people to go into the rabbinate. You're not allowed to watch it." And how he laughed at that story, and I realized that he was figuratively waving me into the rabbinate and wanting me to be there. And taking a class with him at HUC and seeing that this was part of who he was, that he wanted to give back, that if there was any bit of his knowledge and experience that would help somebody else become a better rabbi or cantor or educator, he wanted to do that as much as he could. And how our relationship evolved over the years, though I hope I'm not slighting anyone in this room or anyone watching, though my connections with so many of you were important in my wanting to be a rabbinic intern and eventually rabbi here, the biggest and most important reason I wanted to be here was John. I knew that I had something to offer coming out of rabbinical school, but I knew that I had a lot to learn. And I knew that I needed someone who was going to be a wonderful mentor. And he always was. He would challenge me, he would push back. When I would ask questions with the hope of getting a simple answer, he would never do so. He would turn the tables back on me and have me question it and think about it so that I could come to my own answers. He made me a better rabbi and a better person. As Cantor Kipnis said, that family has to be at the foundation and the most important thing. He always came back to that. He and I would check in every few weeks or so. We would make time on Zoom, and our relationship evolved from mentor-mentee to someone I consider a friend and who has always been a father figure for me. We just talked a couple of weeks ago on Zoom, and he was looking forward to the end of his chemotherapy and the plans that they were going to make together. And so I am devastated. And I wanted to share a few quick stories, a few quick vignettes that I think in total can paint a picture of who John was, at least to me. First of all, this is where I would, if I were wearing a suit, I would button my jacket, because that's one of the things I learned from John, is that you unbutton your jacket when you're sitting down, but when you get up to speak at the lectern, you button your jacket. I'm also wearing a tie that John bought me as one of his shticks and traditions, because he was a man of many shticks and traditions and idiosyncrasies. One was that when a male identifying person joined the clergy or senior staff team, he would take us to, I forget the name, it's on the back of, it's Japanese tie maker that was around the corner, and so I'm wearing the tie that Rabbi Stein bought me. In this very sanctuary where we had my son Jonah's bris, who's now 14. I remember walking up the stairs after the service, and John said, "The Strom boys are criers." And I said, "I thought Jonah did great." He goes, "I wasn't talking about Jonah." There was another moment that one of my favorite stories is on the mezzanine on a Sunday morning afternoon. I was coming back to the office. He was walking away, and he pulls me aside and he says, "Josh, don't get triangulated." And I understand the point, but I went, "Is there something?" I said, "When?" He goes, "Ever." I love that. Also memories of standing here and him checking the pages of his sermon before he would give it to make sure. And at one point I said to him, "If all the pages aren't there, what are you going to do? You're about to give the sermon." And he would say, "Well, at least I'll know and I'll be able to plan for it." He was a big proponent of Viktor Frankl, and one of the things that we talked about regularly, something that I was working on and continue to work on in my life, was Viktor Frankl's idea of the space between the stimulus and your response. Something happens and you're going to respond, but to slow down that space in between. I think that's something we could all learn from and think about. I loved the moments of silliness, and they were real moments of silliness, spliced in with the seriousness, standing up here and singing El Nora Alila on Yom Kippur Ne'ilah, and having that be kind of, I would describe it to people as like the comic relief, the release of the tension in the air. And I was also recalling when we did our 80s pop Purim spiel, and he was going to be the bad guy, which was Michael Jackson, and we had a video where we pretended that we were coming into his office while he was practicing with the leather jacket, and so there's a video of that somewhere that's gold. What? And leather pants. I mean, he went all in because that was John. He also, one of the important things that I took away, one of the many important things, is he would talk about, especially for rabbis, cantors, educators, people who are going to be in front of a group and serving a community, he would talk about the difference between a big ego and a strong ego. That you need to have a strong ego to do what we do. But there's a difference between a strong ego for a sense of a purpose and a strength, rather than it being just about your ego and about your part of being in a space. I always like to keep that in mind as kind of the balancing line of when I'm doing something as a rabbi, am I doing it from a place of strong ego for my community, hopefully, or is this about something different than that, in which case I would check myself. And a lot of us remember the story he would tell every single year at confirmation, every single year, about Sarge and Sarge's mother. That I think it was Indianapolis, that he was doing a funeral for somebody who was an actual sergeant in the Army, so Sarge was not just a nickname. And he did the funeral for Sarge's mom, and Sarge reached out to him about a week later, or whatever it was. I'm getting maybe the intro details not exactly accurate. But he said, I'm forgetting the most important thing that my mom taught, and he would bring this as the message to the confirmands. And my Yiddish isn't very good. But it was Yiddish, and that there were three parts. There was Zaya Yid, Zaya Mensch, and Zaya Stark. Zaya Yid, be a Jew, be proud of your Jewish identity, invest and make time for your Jewish identity and literacy and development, live and be a Jew and be proud of your Jewish identity and find meaning in that as well. Zaya Mensch, be a mensch, be a good person in the world, that what you do and what you say matters. And he carried himself every single day with, I would even say, a hyper-awareness that the words that came out of his mouth and the things that he did and his actions would have a rippling impact. And so he was super conscious of what that could mean for people. So Zaya Mensch. And Zaya Stark, be strong. Be unafraid. The world is a crazy place. The world is a scary place. And we have the temptation so many times to crawl up in a ball and give up and not be strong. And so the parting message, perhaps the most important, but coupled with the others, was be strong. Be unafraid to do the right thing. Be unafraid to be a mensch, to be a yid. Be unafraid and be strong, and pursue what's good in the world. He was all of those things. He was a yid and a mensch, and he was stark. And he has been a part of my life for 20-something years, more than almost half of my life, and certainly all of my adult life. And his gifts, his voice is in my ear and on my shoulder, and I cannot believe he's gone. And I'm sad to stand here in this sanctuary and at this lectern without him being here. He was a good soul. He was an incredible intellect. He was a gift to the world. And he believed in the power of our consciousness, as Rabbi Friedman shared today. He would regularly send these fascinating articles about the consciousness of trees and plants and all of these things in the world, with, I think, a belief underneath it all that something of us goes on, even after our bodies give out, and after his body was riddled with so much illness, that there was a belief somewhere underneath it though with his very rational mind, he may not have been so forthcoming in admitting it, but a belief, I think, that we go on in some way, shape, or form. And I know he will always be with me. And I hope, though not too soon, that I will see him again. Zichrono livracha. May his memory always be for a blessing, as I know it will always be for me. Amen.
Thank you, Rabbi. Now we want to invite you to share. I have a microphone and I'll come around. If you have a story to share of a way that Rabbi Stein touched your life. I was asking Allison before, like, if you were telling someone who didn't know him something that was the essence of who he was. If you'd like to share, it would be a blessing to all of us. And again, I know Susan is going to watch this later. She wanted to make sure that we're recording it so she can hear the words that you have to share. So I'm going to come down. If you have something you want to share, just raise your hand.
Thank you. I occasionally spoke to Rabbi Stein about my family problems many years ago. And I would go and I would cry, and he would listen very intensely. And that was our ritual. I would blow my nose, I'd get up, I'd leave, I'd come back. He was very patient. And he seemed to be listening very intently, but didn't say very much, except hello, goodbye, feel better, whatever. Finally, I'm in the middle of my rant, and he looks at me, and he says, Jane, according to the Torah, you do not have to love your parents, just honor them. And that changed my life. All the guilt, all the shame seemed to melt away. I stopped crying. It was like I was born again, only I decided to remain a Jew.
Jane, thank you for sharing. Others, stories?
Well,
first.
okay. I remember when Rabbi Stein first came to Sharei Tefillah in 2001 and expected to see the whole congregation on Rosh Hashanah. And a few days before that, of course, was 9/11. And we started a phone chain, and the next night, impromptu 1,200 people were gathered here. Capacity to overflowing. And you'd never know that he just started with this congregation. It was as if the way he connected with people, and there was one woman whose husband was missing, and later, was confirmed that he died. You'd never know that he was new, that he didn't really know anybody, and he really connected. And you could feel, as Jane said, I too had some problems with some family problems, and he was always so kind and so wonderful. But one thing that I was the proudest of is I chanted Torah for the first time when he was here. And it was Rosh Hashanah, not the first year that he was here, a few years later. And I was the one who started. It was just the first verses. And he was standing right next to me on that bima, and when I finished, I just looked at him. The biggest smile on his face is such encouragement, and I felt so proud that it was coming from him. And I just loved him, and I send my condolences to Susan and the family. And the resemblance between Rachel and her father is uncanny. It looked exactly like him. I watched the service this afternoon. So please accept my deepest sympathies. I will miss him very, very much.
Mine is a weird story. I came here right before 9/11, I had joined Kabbalah. And I've got to preface this by saying there were many good people there, but I happened to have this weird rabbi who sort of predicted your future, your past, and I had just been through, Screen Actors Guild was on strike, my father had died, I had to support my mother, had no work, and I went there because all the movie stars were there, and I was blessed by Madonna. So I went to this rabbi, the weird one, and I said, what should I do? And he said, become a rock star. I said, but I don't sing. He said, well, that's it. And he took $150 for that. So I went to the top rabbi. I said, what does this mean? And he went down and he yelled at Eliyahu Jihad, tore the check up and said, don't you ever talk to her like that again. So Jihad called me in and said I was the most evil person he had ever met, and that I should die. He's die. When are you going to die? So I was very shook up. I left, and I came here, and I told Rabbi Stein, and he said, no rabbi is ever allowed to say that. And he said, his next sermon was Kabbalah Feh.
Corinne, thank you for that story. Yes, Michael. How you follow that up, Michael?
I'll take a different path. Okay. So because Rabbi Stein was the rabbi during the entire 6 years of my presidency, I think I had a different relationship with him than probably with any other rabbi that I have been with or at a congregation with. And I worked closely with him, and I had the opportunity to see him not only as a rabbi, but really as a person, and as a husband, as a father, as a friend, as a teacher, as a leader and a strategist, and as importantly, as a pastor. And he taught me, and I think all of us, much in his role as the conventional teacher, but more in the way that he approached difficult issues and the way that he treated others. He came to Shari Tefillah after a long career at 2 other congregations, but he came to a congregation that had just said goodbye to its senior rabbi, who many of us had only known Rabbi Tattlebaum as our rabbi. And so while he had significant experience as a rabbi, to us he was new, and we treated him as new, and we didn't want anything to change, at least for some period of time. And remarkably, he was okay with that. He had the wisdom to understand that. He was secure enough in his role to understand our security. When I was brand new to the position of president, I knew nothing about how to be president or what the details of the position was. And while he was also new, he came with a wealth of experience and knowledge, and he could have easily told me what I should do. He could have told me, this is the decision you should make. But instead, he really gave me the room to analyze. He gave me the ability to navigate and reach the decisions myself. And that was part of his wisdom and his leadership style. After a period of not changing anything, he entered a period of changing a lot, and it was an important period for us. I don't remember all the details, and Josh can help, but I know that here too, he did not tell us what to do, but he really guided us. He took our goals, our ideas, and our thoughts, and he helped shape them with him together. Some of his priorities at that time were teen engagement. Shabbat Unplugged, I believe, started with Rabbi Stein, right? Sid Winterberg reminded me today that under Rabbi Stein, the caring committee was formed, and we started to first reach out to families who had just suffered a loss. He was careful and gradual in the changes in ritual. There was a time when we were debating the change of service time. You would think that we were discussing changing Shabbat to Sunday with some of the members of our congregation, but he navigated that well. And we spent a lot of time together on Israel engagement work. And as I witnessed the changes in the congregation, I also witnessed what was remarkable, a change in him and his approach and his beliefs and his attitude. His influence was vast, and he was an important figure in the lives of many. And over the years, in my role within the congregation and in the movement, I saw scores of people who told me that they were inspired by Rabbi Stein, many rabbis, cantors, educators, Jewish professionals who today attribute their career choice to him. I will always value the great influence that he had on me as a person, as a Jew, and as one involved in Jewish organizational life. His calm and thoughtful guidance was always important, and his value-based approach to decision-making was a critical influence on me. We spent a lot of time together at various board meetings. He was the president of CCR, and I was involved in the reform movement at various levels, and I saw that he was a well-respected leader by all of his colleagues in the movement. But I'll always remember, and I've told this story before, that he gave me one of the greatest scares of my life when, as a brand new president, at my first high holiday, standing on the bima, we had a carefully choreographed schedule with 2 services upstairs, 2 services downstairs, and I had, I think, 4.5 minutes to give my presidential address. And so, you know, you're nervous. I looked out and I see all of these faces staring at me. And as I'm ready, I walk up. He finishes his sermon and he looks at me and he says, "I'm not sure when I'm going to be back. If I'm late, just fill." And I'm thinking, what did he just say? Did I hear that right? What am I going to fill with? I have 4.5 minutes. Exactly. No more and no less. Well, he was late. I started talking about the new database. I felt like James Brown. Cantor Rubin came over and put his arm around me and said, "We can sing a song." But I'll always remember that. We are, I think, all heartbroken by his death. He did much for me and our family. His influence will live on forever. I was fortunate to be one of the thousands whose life was touched by his rabbinate, and I know that that touch will influence me and others for generations to come. May his memory be for an eternal blessing.
So, couple things. I don't know who said it. 2/3 of life is showing up, and Jonathan always showed up, and he would pop up at these sort of odd moments for our family. One that sticks in my mind is Marlene got run down by a car on her way to Minion. And the next thing we know, John's in the hospital room, being very funny, as I recall, because he could be very, very funny. Our son Danny, when he was, I guess when he was still in high school, was in Jerusalem, and somehow managed to hook up with a temple trip that was there. Danny was there for other reasons. And I know we didn't want him knocking around by himself, and John, Rabbi Stein, walked him home through Jerusalem. He showed up. It's interesting. I think of his role in this congregation as highly innovative. And he was also, I think it's fair to say, more traditional in his approach to liturgy and Judaism in general than Rabbi Tattlebaum. So he was an innovative traditionalist. I believe he grew up in a conservative congregation in perhaps Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And if anybody here has read the grocery store book, you may have an image of that. But John, Rabbi Stein, was an innovator in the sense of bringing traditionalism, or more tradition, into the liturgy, into the services here. There's a certain good ear he had for where the movement might be headed, because I think what he was doing there has caught the zeitgeist of the Reform movement in varying degrees in different congregations, but I think he clearly had an ear for where things were headed. But he was also innovative in a real sense. I worked very closely with him on a program called Masa. And I remember these early morning meetings in his office with Kathy Chase and Barry Walcher and Rabbi Stein and Mindy Davids, and we would sit around and go through these bounds of material, which ultimately turned into that program, which really had a very interesting thrust to it. And I think what appealed to him about it was not just teaching the kids, but the format it provided for parents for some bit of adult learning, separate from the children, so that the teaching moment didn't look like those kids' birthday parties where the parents stand behind each of the little kids at the table, right? The parents would go off and the kids would go here. And I think, that actually had an impact on a very large number of people in this congregation. Bonds were formed among that community, and a lot of learning got done. So John was a great teacher. He loved, and I remember him saying this when he retired. He said one of his favorite things was just teaching a modern Hebrew class, right? Because he had a love for the language. And I remember him up at the blackboard sketching out, writing obviously from right to left in Hebrew, and being mystified myself by the letters, and turning to Marlene and saying, what was that? And she would tell me. But he was a person of great loves, the greatest clearly being Susan. But he had others, including the Hebrew language.
Go to Susan back here.
Hi. So this is kind of a little bit of a funny, quirky situation. I was blessed, and I knew it then and even more now, to study for my adult bat mitzvah with Rabbi Stein and Cantor Rubin. And somewhere shortly before the big event, it was suddenly pointed out that women were not permitted to wear pants on the bima. We had to be in a dress. And I remember, and I'm someone that doesn't usually take no very well. Sometimes I don't even understand the meaning of the word no. And yet he stood there, absolutely not. And I just said, okay, and I wore a dress. And sometime shortly thereafter, as change did permeate through the community, I noticed that there were women on the bima in pants. So I went to Rabbi Stein and said, Rabbi, what's going on? Now this is allowed? And I can just picture his famous shrug of the shoulder, a little smile as if he was saying, new? His memory will always be a blessing.
Right. I forgot the most important thing. When my mother was dying in 2007, it was clear that she was not waking up from the coma. She was not going to go home again. And I said, how can I do this? How can I call the rabbi in his apartment at 11 o'clock at night? And yet I did, because I didn't know what else to do, because I had to make the decision. And I couldn't do it. And I called, and Susan answered the phone, and I told her I was in the hospital. My mother was dying, but she wasn't dying unless I made it happen. And she called him right over, and the upshot of that conversation was that I was able to do what I had to do without the guilt and without the angst, and I will forever be grateful for that. And as a follow-up to that, all of a sudden, people appeared at Shiva. We didn't have a caring committee back then. And all of a sudden, board members, I remember Michael coming to my house. And I remember David Gorman and Jesse and people who came. And it was all because he started this thing that, you know, people should visit. So I really want to thank Susan and posthumously Rabbi Stein for that, because that was really something that was very, very meaningful to me.
A few comments. Rabbi Stein came in 2001. In 2001, I took a trip with my husband to Italy, and that's where he passed away. Suddenly. So people said to me, and I was in this terrible state, "You have to call your rabbi." My rabbi? He's new. I don't even know how to contact him. He just came to the synagogue, but I can call Rabbi Tattlebaum. Well, I woke up Rabbi Tattlebaum in the middle of the night, time difference. He was wonderful, and he contacted Rabbi Stein. He came to my house, Rabbi Stein, met my son and I. We didn't know us. He was so nice and caring, and he was just there for weeks seeing me. But I also want to say, Susan, she also stepped in. She was delivering packages for the needy, which now is done by Tarot, that kind of thing. She says, "Come with me, keep me company." So Susan was wonderful also, and I just want to say that. I think she's probably listening. Also, around the same time, we went to Israel. And I remember debating that trip. I hadn't been in years. Can I go back? Well, there's a synagogue trip, but my husband just died. I went, and he was our leader. And I remember one incident on the bus. We're going to a spa, and he would announce things. And he had to announce who's getting which massage at which time. We were in hysterics, but he was very organized, and we were laughing. He was just wonderful.
Okay, we want to make sure we hear from people that we haven't heard from first, so are there others that want to share? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lauren. First, I want to extend my condolences to his whole family, if they're listening. Anyway, so I've been a member of this temple, like, basically since my whole life. So I had Rabbi Tattlebaum, was there for my, for my family, for my bat mitzvah, my brother's bar mitzvah, my grandma's funeral, and I was getting married, and in 2001 I contacted Rabbi Tattlebaum, and I said, "Hey, can you do my wedding?" And he said, and I was, we felt so close to him, and he said, "No, I'm leaving." I said, "What do you mean you're leaving? You've done everything with my family. I feel so close my whole life, and how do I do this? I'm, so many decades, and whatever." I'm like, "How?" And he said, "Well, you're gonna have a new, you're gonna have a new rabbi, and this is going to be, I'm like the past, and this is the rabbi who's gonna be your future. So I really believe that, he said, I might be going on vacation. I can't fully commit. I'm not sure, and, but even if I was able to do it, I actually think that it would be best for you to do something that's going forward." And I was actually very wise and whatever. So then I met Rabbi Stein, and as soon as I met him, I was really enamored. I thought he was, he was so nice, and he was like he said to me, like, he was honored to do my wedding, because we were like I think we were his first wedding. And I'm actually, I would say now that I'm honored to have had that connection, to be part of that, for one of his first connections to the temple to be our wedding. And just to continue with that, so I ended up getting divorced. I'm remarried now. But I have to say, because I felt that strong connection with him, he was amazing throughout my whole divorce process. When I told him I was having issues, and even before I was going to counseling and things like that, I would talk to him about it. Because he married us, I felt very connected with him, and we would talk. And sometimes he lived in the neighborhood, so I would bump into him, and we would start our conversations. And sometimes he would say, like, he would take the time to talk to me on the street corner for a while. And sometimes if it looked like he was going to go longer, he would say, come into my, let's make an appointment, come to my study and talk to me. And he always took the time, and I felt very connected with him, and he was really, it was amazing. And then I had, before my divorce, I also had I had my children, and they were in the preschool here. And I was actually, again, I thought of the words that Rabbi Teitelbaum said, were like, well, you want to have somebody who's with you who's going to be going forward. And I said, you know what? And I was, when the kids were in the preschool here, and they got to know Rabbi Stein. I was like, what? We had the wedding. It was like different stages in my life. I had Rabbi Teitelbaum for these earlier stages. Then I had, then Rabbi Stein was the wedding and my children's preschool, and they would always run up and give him hugs. And at that time, my kids were going to all the events with Purim and Sukkot and all these things. So it was not just the school time. We would go to all these events, and he really made it fun. And it was always great to see him, and he was always so wonderful to my kids. So I'm really grateful for that, experience. And then it's nice to then, now moving to have, Rabbi Masbacher with the neck was like later on another generation having, my kids' bar mitzvahs, So it's actually like, I'm trying to look at it and like, I'm very sad about everything, but I'm really, honored that I've had all these amazing rabbis in different stages for different important events in my life. So, so I want to, thank everybody for that.
My family really loved Rabbi Stein. When I grew up, my father was in the service, and so we moved around every couple of years, and sometimes that was easy, sometimes it was not easy. And this is in the 70s, we moved to Indianapolis, and it was not easy. And so, my mother is Asian, and so when I was in Indianapolis, I remember telling my dad, I said, there's a total of 4 Asians and Jews in my middle school, and 2 of them are my sister, right? And so my father, sort of, I think, sensing this, found a congregation. It was the Indianapolis Hebrew congregation. And of course, Rabbi Stein was a rabbi and then a senior rabbi there. And I just remember, I was a kid, and so I just remember him being he seemed like a giant. I don't know, he had a mustache, and he was big, always had a lot of stuff, but like the nicest, just a very gentle human. And he would welcome my mother, Yoli, and slowly he would introduce us to family members, and it was welcoming, and I remember he talked to my father, and he said, I think Steve, me, and Tina and Ray, my siblings, should go to Jewish summer camp. There was a camp in Zionsville, Indiana, Goldman Union Camp Institute. And he said, this would be great, and they'll go learn about Shabbat, and do all sorts of things. And my father, we didn't have 2 nickels then, said, this is great, but, I don't think we can do this. And Rabbi Stein said, hey, just so you know, Marv, just so happens that there were 3 scholarships that are available, which of course. And so we went, and it was great. And he presided over my brother's confirmation. He loved my brother. And my bar mitzvah. Sorry. And my sisters, and he was just so welcoming. I really appreciated him.
Any last reflections? Yeah.
I just wanted to share memories and gratitude for a couple of sweet events. I could also talk longer, but when we were first moved uptown and joined the congregation, and there were a lot of people at Rosh Hashanah services, Rabbi Stein took note that I had helped Freddie be busy. He must have been about 5 years old then, with Rich's tallis bag filled with kippahs from every family event that we had been. And he had stacked them on his head. And even though it was a packed sanctuary, Rabbi Stein took the moment and stopped in the procession to acknowledge this kid in the back row at the side, tucked in the corner. And he said, "Meet me in my office." So that was an invitation after the holidays to come up and see him in his study, and he took him into the inner bathroom and showed him the collection of talises and the collection of kippahs, and he said, "You need another one, pick one." And he let Freddie pick a kippah from his collection. And to bookend with all of what he gave to us as a family and our boys growing up, and the inspiration and support, when he was in the process of retiring, he invited the teens up to his office, and Freddie was given one of his high holiday talis.
I want to thank everyone for sharing all these beautiful stories, and we will share this with Susan and the family. He was a blessing to all of you and to so many, as Michael said, really thousands of people, not only here, but all over the country and all over the world. And his memory indeed will be a blessing. I hope you'll keep sharing stories. I knew him a little, but not like you did, and it's a blessing for me to hear all of these amazing stories and all the ways that he touched your lives. So thank you for sharing. Thanks for sharing with each other. We're going to bring our service towards a close. We want to invite you, please, to stand.
שוכן במרומים, המצא מנוחה נכונה, תחת כנפי השכינה. אם קדושים וטהורים, כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים את נשמת יקירנו שהלך לעולמו בעל הרחמים. יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום, בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen.
May the source of life, the fountain of all being, open our hearts to compassion and our eyes to wisdom, that we might glimpse in perfect peace and sadness the way of all things. May Rabbi Stein's memory be for us a blessing, and may we never let the light of his love grow dim in our hearts. May we remember all of his worthy and righteous deeds, that his memory be forever bound up in the bond of life. God is our source and our destination, our beginning and our end. May Jonathan's death awaken us to this truth, that the bond of love you all shared with him and continue to share cannot be severed in sorrow. May he rest in peace. And together we say, Amen. The origins of Mourner's Kaddish are mysterious, and what we think we know is that the first place that it was recited, the first kind of place that it was recited, was at the end of a period of learning and study in honor of great teachers. And so we recite this prayer in memory of all of our loved ones, and tonight particularly we recite it in memory of our beloved teacher, Rabbi Jonathan Stein. If you need the words, you can pick up a prayer book. They're on page 294. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, B'alma divra chiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, b'agala v'zman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mavarach le'alam olamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha b'richu, le'ila min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran b'alma v'yimru, Amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru, Amen. Please be seated.
When Rabbi Stein retired, I commissioned a piece in his honor, a setting of Aseh Lecha Rav by Cantor Jonathan Komisar. And I wanted to share that today, and I'm grateful for Cantor Singer, who was here for a year with him as the assistant cantor here, and I know he loved working with him too. And so we're going to share this setting of Aseh Lecha Rav that we commissioned for him, and actually we presented him with a framing of the lyrics for of the piece. A teacher, a scholar, a leader, a mentor, pursuer of justice, pursuer of peace.
To challenge, inspire, to help us reach higher, the work is not done, and the work will not cease.
And the legacy of a rabbi is a gift that does not end. When you say, "This is my rabbi," you can say, "This is my friend."
Someone who counsels, someone who comforts, someone who guides us to find our own voice.
Someone who teaches that life has its seasons, a time that we mourn and a time we rejoice.
And the legacy of a rabbi, over time it will not end.
When you say, "This is my rabbi," you have made a lifelong friend. Aseh lecha Rav, ukeneh lecha chaver. Blessings and gratitude for the times you have been there. Aseh lecha Rav, ukeneh lecha chaver. Blessings and gratitude as we offer our prayer. And in the name of the one who taught us Torah, Ve'vedan et kol ha'adam l'chaf zechut.
And in the name of the one who taught us Torah,
we will try to live our lives with justice and with truth.
Haselech harav, ukenelech hachaver. Blessings and gratitude for the times you have in there. Haselech harav, ukenelech hachaver. Blessings and gratitude as we offer a prayer.
A teacher, a scholar, a leader, a mentor, pursuer of justice, pursuer of peace.
To challenge, inspire, to help us reach higher. The work is not done, and the work will not cease. And the legacy of a rabbi is a gift that does not end. You have been a rabbi, and you have been our friend.
Thank you all for being here this evening. Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may the memory of our righteous friend be a blessing. Thank you all.
I want to thank Allison, who I literally texted her this morning if she could come, and she came. So thank you, Allison.
It's good to sing with you again. I'm only sorry I didn't wear my Jonathan Stein tie.
I know, me too. Me
We
too.
should have all worn our ties. Should have coordinated the ties. I'm going to wear it tomorrow, though.
Okay, good.
Was it Yagamaki or something like that? Sego.
Yes,
Okay.
which
It's like,
closed
I remember
also
that. Yeah.
a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Probably just before COVID, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have so many things I could have said, but it's best not.
How will you remember him?
Just, I had a really positive experience with him. And, I was the second cantor of the congregation. So I came in the very last year of Bruce Rubin's tenure at the synagogue. And I think they wanted me to stay on as kind of like the security blanket, coasting. But at the time, both HUC opened up, so he took HUC as the head of HUC, and I ended up at Stephen Wise. But what I remember about Jonathan Stein's role in that is that, I went to him because I was I went to him and I said, listen, there's an opportunity for me on that side to be a senior position in the congregation. Should I go for it? And I said, go. And, that takes some humility and some collegiality too. I'm sure he and Ami they were always good friends. So I got a rabbinic blessing to go, and he was kind of. But just hearing all of these memories reminds me what a creature of habit he was.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, just the thing with the ties, the Sammy's Romanian, and he has certain things that he's got to do. Like as a rabbi, he has to check all the boxes. That's what I saw anyway. And I was the second to do. It was Rabbi Stephen Wise, my classmate, not this founder. But he was my classmate who created Shabbat Unplugged. So I was kind of like, as the second rabbi, second cantor, I was doing a lot of the kind of youth programming, all the youth stuff. I was running the B'nai Mitzvah program, and I was, and at the time there was like 90 kids in the B'nai Mitzvah program at the time. It was nuts, and there was like 10 cantorial students who were all, like all tourists. It was just nuts. Yeah. So, but I had, so it was crazy from that perspective. But he is a rabbi, and he was a good guy. Yeah, right. I had a good experience. My son's becoming a bar mitzvah.
Mazel tov. It's like I've never done it before. It's like you've never been the father. It's a totally different thing.
Totally different thing.
When's the bar mitzvah?
Shabbat Shira, so it's February 8th, and I'm already crying.
I'm sure.
already crying. Oh my wife starts playing the music for the montage, and I'm just like,
Enjoy every bit of it.
thank you.